So for the past month, I've been trying to make this film analysis type thing where I talk about remakes. And the original plan was to read the script that I had prepared and edit the whole thing with footage of the films I was going to talk about. It was going to be very professional, but for some reason, whenever I read the script, I sound like a pretentious fucking douchebag. Now, I may be a pretentious fucking douchebag, but I don't want to sound like one. So, instead of my original idea, I'm going to make this little improvised podcast here. Because when you do a podcast, you tend to sound more genuine. And I guess that has to do with the whole setup. You know, it's very intimate. You have a microphone, a camera, you're just talking to a microphone. And for some reason that brings out a truer version of yourself, well, at least for me. I don't know if that makes any sense. But yeah, remakes. I fucking love remakes. I love the idea of taking an old movie and updating it to today's standards. Now, of course, not all remakes are that. You know, most remakes, in fact, are just very shameless cash grabs. But every once in a while, a remake comes along that is just so good, it actually surpasses the original movie.
It's never been done before. What's the target? When was the last time you were in Vegas?
You want to knock over a casino?
Ocean's 11 is such a masterpiece of a remake. It objectively obliterates its source material. Now, like a lot of you, I didn't know that Ocean's 11 was a remake. In fact, only very recently did I find this out. So of course, I had to watch the original. And as I was watching it, I thought, wow, this movie is a real piece of shit. Like, it's really bad. And it's hard to believe it was once considered this untouchable classic. But part of that is because it stars Frank Sinatra. Now I know what you're thinking. Frank Sinatra can act? And no, he cannot. He's a fucking terrible actor. In fact, the only good things about this movie are the plot, which, you know, it's an interesting idea, having 11 cool guys rob a bunch of casinos in Las Vegas, and Dean Martin. Dean Martin is not a good actor either, by any stretch of the imagination. But he is so fun to watch. He has this very nonchalant, I don't really give a shit about anything type of personality. And as someone who takes everything way too seriously, it's really refreshing to see someone like that on screen. Like, this guy doesn't care about anything, and he's always having fun. But aside from that, this movie fucking sucks. The remake, though, this shit is the poster child of heist movies. I mean, dude, stop this video right now, go to Google, and type in heist movie. What's the first thing that pops up? Ocean's 11, baby. Of course. This movie set the bar for what a remake should be. You know, it takes all the good parts of the original, throws out all the shit, and makes it super fun. It's a fun movie, dude. This movie's purpose is to entertain you, and it really succeeds in doing that. And it does so by adding a lot of new interesting elements to it. Because see, the number one problem with modern remakes is that they're often just a rehash of old productions that don't add anything new or worth watching to them. I mean, take Aladdin, for example. The original Aladdin? That shit is the ultimate Disney movie. You know, it's got stunning visuals and amazing art direction, a cast of iconic characters. It's got fucking Robin Williams. And of course, one of the most memorable soundtracks of all time. Actually, fuck that song. What makes this movie so good, though, is that the people behind it were clearly fucking lunatics. I mean, just take a look at this plot. It's about a thief with a sidekick monkey who gets recruited by an evil wizard to go inside a magic cave and steal a golden lamp where a giant blue god lives. The thief then uses the blue god's powers to turn him into a prince so he can go back home and bang this girl he met like a day ago. Does that sound like a normal story to you? Then you've got fucking Robin Williams, who read the script and basically said, you know what, fuck this, I'm just going to talk into a microphone for 10 hours.
Let's blow this popsicle stand!
A doorstop would be a fabulous career.
Not bad! Good night, Alice!
You've got these musical scenes that look more like acid trips than musical scenes. You've got this villain who is best friends with a talking parrot. Dude, this movie is so off the fucking rails, it's a miracle it got made in the first place. But at the same time, you can tell that the people behind it really wanted to create something special. And then you have this year's fucking atrocity. The 2019 live-action Aladdin remake is a slap in the face of all the fans of the original. It takes everything good about the original movie and just takes a giant dump all over it. Oh, you got a cool and charismatic protagonist who is both street smart and has a heart of gold? How about we completely castrate his character and turn him into a total wuss? Oh, you have a villain who has this very deep and sinister voice? Let's cast a Calvin Klein model with the least menacing voice ever.
Steal an apple and you're a thief. Steal a kingdom and you're a statesman.
Will Smith is in this movie? Dude, gotta give him a girl to bang. Like seriously, Will Smith has to bang a girl in every movie. At this point, I think it's part of his contract. My point is that this remake does all the things that a remake shouldn't do. It makes the characters from the original less likable, adds a bunch of fucking bullshit, like that stupid-ass Jasmine song, and it tries to emulate an iconic performance with a, let's face it, less talented actor. So now let's take a look at what a good remake does. First of all, Steven Soderbergh, I don't know who his casting director was, but he deserves a raise. Like, 18 years later, like he still deserves a raise. Because this cast is unbelievable. You got George Clooney as like the top dog of the operation, and he's at the peak of his game in this movie. You've got Brad Pitt as his right-hand man, who for some reason is always eating french fries in every scene. You've got Don Cheadle as this explosives expert, who has this really fake-ass British Cockney accent, but it's hilarious, and it's even more funny because no one seems to understand him. You've got Matt Damon as the new kid, who is talented, but still needs to prove himself to the rest of the crew. You've got Bernie Mac as the inside man. You've got Carl Reiner as the old pro. You've got Eddie Jemison as the hacker who can do basically anything. And my favorite ones, Scott Caan and Casey Affleck as these two brothers who are like constantly fighting with each other, which is both funny and really relatable. And finally, you have this Chinese acrobat guy, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. But he doesn't speak a word of English, and yet has one of the funniest lines in the whole movie. This film has so much going on, yet you never feel overwhelmed by it. The heist they're pulling is insanely complicated, and yet you feel in on the whole thing, which is, besides the cast, is this movie's greatest strength. It makes its audience feel like they're outsmarting this casino guy who eats baby seals for breakfast. It's amazing. I mean, this movie is so good, they made sequels for it. I think this is the first remake ever made that actually got sequels. And the first one was so bad, they had to make a second one just to get their money back. My point is that a movie like this doesn't come by very often. And part of that is because remaking an objectively bad film is not an easy pitch to pull off in a meeting room. Yet there are a ton of bad movies out there that have incredible plots that unfortunately we'll probably never see get a proper remake. Part of that is because, it's a huge gamble for the studios to remake these films. while a remake of, say, Mulan is a guaranteed $1 billion in Disney's pockets. And listen, it's not that I dislike the concept of live-action remakes. I actually think it's a really neat idea, but the way they're done, with such blatant disregard for their source material, and like zero respect for the audience. Looking back, what made the original one so good was the fact that the people behind them were so bold and visionary. You know, they didn't care if they scared a bunch of 80-year-olds. They didn't care if their musical numbers looked like fucking LSD trips. They weren't afraid of taking some fucking risks. And at the end of the day, as a filmmaker, you gotta pull some ballsy shit if you want your movie to stand out. Like Sharknado 3D.